Good evening and welcome to the Arundel Camera Club virtual live stream for Thursday, September 30th, 2021. My name is John Milliker and I'm the club president for the 2021-2022 season. The Arundel Camera Club was founded in 1957 and exists to promote the arts, science, and education in all aspects and fields of photography. For more information about us, please visit www.arundelcameraclub.org. Thank you for joining us for our virtual live stream. For the time being, the Arundel Camera Club has made the decision to stay virtual only until a time when the majority of our club members and officers feel safe enough to make it back in person. We will continue to monitor the COVID situation and make choices with the help of members on when we can finally meet in person again. A side note, Ron has sent me an email asking me to remind everyone that the deadline to submit your photos to the Maryland Photography Alliance contest is Sunday. Be sure to check your email for the link and the access code as a member of the Arundel Camera Club. I submitted mine today. Christine, did you submit yours today, or was it yesterday?
Mine was last week.
So get those in. Don't delay. And before tonight's program, here's Christine with our upcoming schedule.
October 7th is a critique session led by Greg Holden and will be led on Zoom by Ron Pfeiffer next week. Like it was last month, an email will come out with more information on that.
And Christine, I do want to apologize doing Zoom again, but we're going to be out of town that day, and Ron was so gracious enough to be able to offer it again. And we will do like we did last time. If you don't get on Zoom, we will definitely be putting that back up on YouTube once that's done.
October 9th is a club field trip to Gambrel State Park. October 14th is a program by Chris Spielman on architectural photography and commercial, specifically on commercial interiors. October 20th is our club fundraiser at Brian Booroo. Did you want to talk about that, John?
That's going to be on a Wednesday, and several of our club members have already been out to Brian Booroo, and this is something that they do for us that has been extremely helpful for the club. And what it is a 3-course meal, and it's $25 and $10, a very generous $10 comes back to the club. And not only can you eat there, but if you're not feeling safe to go out and eat, you can definitely call it in and pick it up and take it out as well. I also was told by the manager, while they don't have the tent in the background and in the back anymore, something weird with local government things, they will be putting it back. But for our event, it won't be there, but seating will be available in the back where that tent used to be and also in the front. So hopefully, let's cross our fingers for some good weather.
Right. October 21st is our October digital contest. The theme is Reflections. October 23rd is a club field trip to Patuxent Research Refuge. And October 28th is a program by Jonathan Newton, a Washington Post staff photographer. Now let's get back to John. He's going to talk to us about Trunk and Treat.
I sent out I put a post on Facebook, and I'll send an email out as well. The place it's going to be our new home once we get kind of out of this hump of COVID. They're having an event on Friday, October 29th, and it's called Trunk and Treat, and it's for families of the community to come in and just kind of have like this nice little fall festival kind of thing going on. And Christine and I were going to set up maybe a little photo studio, so that way the parents and the kids that are dressed up can get a photo, and then we would put them online for a free digital download. And I had sent out a message on Facebook asking if anybody is interested in helping us with that, or I know there are other opportunities to help the event staff as well. Please reach out to me. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity. We're helping. We'd like to have some people helping pose, light, photography, and maybe computer work. I'll have all that set up, and it'll be a great time to learn. Kind of what Christine and I do when we go to an event and shooting tethering, shooting live editing, and all that fun stuff. Thank you, Christine.
Tonight's program is by Lester Picker. Lester has more than 650 writing and photo credits in National Geographic Society publications, Forbes, Time Incorporated, Fortune, National Parks Magazine, and dozens of newspapers, magazines, and other publications. He is a former reporter, photojournalist, and editor. For 3 years, Les was a columnist for Oceans Magazine, and for 4 years was editor-in-chief for a national environmental magazine. Good evening, Les.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. We're
Good.
so happy to have you here speaking to us.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to put us on full screen. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Good. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Thanks especially to Christine and John for putting the technical things together. Tonight we're going to do something different from what I typically do, which is give talks about specific skills in photography. It could be photographing wildlife. It might be compositional issues, printing. Since we are my assistant is a master printer. We do a lot of workshops and presentations on that. But tonight we're going to do something different. I would like to talk with you about really what happens behind the scenes. What is the story behind the scenes of various images that people see in magazines or in books? So I'll start with a slideshow. It's actually accompanied by music, but you won't hear it due to technical reasons. I'll listen to it, you won't. But I'm sorry about that. It's probably the best part of the presentation. But the slideshow is 4 minutes long. That's it. You'll probably notice some of the images that you'll see have appeared on magazine covers or inside magazines. What you'll see is not only what kind of photography I do, but rather the kind of photography I don't do. For example, I'm not a studio photographer. So just take a look. If you recognize some places, so much the better. And with that, no more talking. I'll just let you watch this slideshow.
Les, we've lost the slideshow. Oh, there it goes back again.
Okay, well, thank you for watching. And again, I'm sorry that you didn't have the music accompanying it. Uh, but before I get started on the actual behind the scenes stories, let me just say that I welcome your questions. If you have any, please go on the chat and send them off to Christine. Christine will relay those to me. I'm dividing the presentation into places, animals, and people. And but at the end of the presentation, I will be here to answer whatever questions you might have. Uh, Also, I'm going to need to talk fast and get through this because I probably could stay here all night and tell you stories that have happened over 50 years under some rather weird conditions. But I've just chosen a few as examples. So let's get going with this story here. Some of you may know I'm also a novelist, and I have 3 novels that I wrote about ancient Egypt. They're historical fiction. And I needed to learn more about how people survive in the desert, in the Egyptian desert in particular. And fortunately, I also was on assignment for National Geographic at the time, so I was able to live with a Bedouin tribe. This is Abdulzar Suleiman, who's the sheikh of a 1,200 square mile area in the Eastern Desert, stretching from Luxor to Cairo. So he's really a very revered figure. And this is what the Eastern Desert largely looks like. It's mountainous. There are 3 colors of mountains: red, brown, and blue. I don't have any blue ones in this picture, but you can see from the rocks that they've been carried there when this was actually a seabed. But I want to get to the story here. This is one of Abdulzar's sisters. She lives in the deep desert with her family, and this is what their typical living conditions are like. There are fewer and fewer Bedouins that are actually living in the deep desert for reasons that I won't get into now, but his family certainly still does. You'll notice the conditions are very modest, and sleeping is done on the desert floor. When I was with them and I slept on the desert floor here or in other encampments, sometimes just Abdulzar and myself out alone, we always surrounded ourselves at night with these scrub brushes, and that's to keep venomous snakes from getting into your sleeping bag or into your blanket, because it does get cold at night. So it's one of the dangers, if you will, that we have out in the field. But the story really involves not this girl. This is Abdul's younger niece, but this girl. So here she is. When I took this picture, she was 10 years old. And you notice the chocolate on her cheeks because I had given her an energy bar to eat that was chocolate covered, but it was 120 degrees out, so it wasn't probably a very good choice. But anyway, 10 years old. And a week later, I attended a celebration in her honor because she was betrothed to a man, and she was married the next year. The man was in his 50s, and she was not his first wife. But at that event, at that celebration event, I also witnessed a man slap his wife hard enough to knock her off her feet. So I turned to Abdulzar, who I love dearly. He's a wonderful man. And I said, Abdulzar, why don't you do something about it? Because he doesn't speak English, but I used to speak Arabic. I've lost 90% of what I used to speak because I haven't really used it in quite a while. And he said, Les, if I were to do something, I would no longer be the sheikh, which I thought was interesting. And my point here behind the scenes is that, our imagery that people see, they see one side of the camera. They don't see what goes on behind the scenes. And there are times when, much as we want to do something to help, we're powerless to do so. And this is one of those examples. And just as a behind the scenes example. But switching to a more positive note, I'm hoping some of you will recognize some of the scenes here. This is Moraine Lake, which is about 11 miles from Lake Louise, which is where most tourists go. In any event, I was there for every time I go to the Canadian Rockies, I stop at Moraine Lake, a very holy site to the Indigenous people. This particular day, I had to get back to Calgary for an evening flight, and I was at 2 to 3 hours from Calgary here. But this particular day, since I knew I had to leave, I got up early. It was a miserable day. This is the first snowfall of the season. It's September, and it was a drizzly, rainy, snowy day. Sun wasn't out at all. I figured it would be a waste. So I walked up to this overlook, and sure enough, there was Rodney Lowe, the famous photographer, award-winning, with his custom-made large format camera, some monster. And since we couldn't shoot anything, we just sat and talked for most of the day. And I hadn't had breakfast. I didn't have lunch with me, so I had a headache already from I guess the sugar low. Either way, at about 3 o'clock, and I knew I had to leave soon, Rod says to me, "Do you mind just watching my equipment?" No one else was there. We were the only two at the lake. He said, "I'm just going to go down to my van." And literally, folks, 5 minutes after he went down the trail to go back to the parking lot, the sun blasted through, and I managed to get the shot, which has been a cover photo. It's been in magazines, etc. Literally 3-4 minutes is all it lasted. That's it. And then it clouded over again and started to snow. Rod came back up and he said to me, "Well, did I miss anything?" And of course I said, "No, you really didn't miss a thing." And I packed up and left. Like 2 months later, I saw his image that he managed to get. He was there for 3 days, by the way, and left a little frustrated. But it just goes to show you that sometimes you're at the right place at the wrong time, but if you wait it out, you can get lucky. That's basically it. This shot was taken in Antarctic, and it's a Norwegian research vessel that just coincidentally sailed into this cove where I was. Now, you might say, okay, well, that is a fairly easy shot to get, but the backstory to it is that I was actually camping on this in the Antarctic to the right, on the right side of this image, and this happened at 2:30 in the morning. So it's a 24-hour day. There's a golden hue to the light when it gets around 2 a.m., between 2 and 4 or 5 a.m. before the sun starts rising a little bit. But it's just amazing color and beauty in the Antarctic. Some of you will recognize this. This is a waterfall in Iceland, and it's hard. I go to Iceland, by the way, in the off season. In fact, I'll be there in October, avoiding the crowds. I also like the dynamics of the weather. In this case, I was here, and I wanted to somehow impart the scale here, because people have trouble understanding just how massive this waterfall is. I waited here for close to 2 hours. There was no one else there until a lone hiker, a young woman, walked past. I never even spoke to her. I don't know her name, whatever. But at the next shot, I was able to get her standing there, admiring the waterfall. And she stood there long enough that I could just take a third of a second exposure and still give a sense of how massive that was. Some of you recognize this, I'm sure, Acadia National Park in Maine. This is Sand Beach at sunrise. This is Door Mountain, looking across from a pond. So I want to say I'm privileged in a way. I lived in Maine for 10 years. I used Acadia National Park as one of my research sites for my doctorate, and I've been privileged to hike every single peak in it and I know many of the trails. I tell you that only because of this next image. This next image is taken at a place called Hunter Cove, Hunter Beach, and Hunter Point. And I was with 5 of my clients. We did a week in Acadia, a week supposedly in Acadia National Park. But when we arrived in Maine, we found that the government, being unfunded, had closed all the national parks down. If you remember, several years ago that happened. And we were not allowed in the park. However, I know all the back roads in the park, having been there so much, and I know that some of the trails, most of the trails, pretty well. So I figured a way to get here without going through the gates of the park, and we hiked in, and we spent the morning here. I was helping everyone with their images. But as we left, I asked everyone, "Do you want to see me set up an image?" And they said, "Sure." So I set this up, and I got the shot. I kind of like it. But then we packed up and started to hike out. And about a third of a mile, quarter of a mile walking out, I happened to see a park ranger walking toward us. And he said, "Do you know that you're trespassing?" I said, "Well, yes, I have to admit I did know that the park is closed, but I felt we could hike in." And he said, "No." He gave me a summons and with a fine of $200 times 6 for the 5 other people plus myself. He was a young whippersnapper, so the next morning I called and I said, "Man, can I speak to the supervisor of the park rangers?" And the man met me that morning, and he came over. He kind of looked familiar, and he came over to me and he said, "I know you. I took a 2-day course with you with other rangers on ecology." And he said, "I remember." I said, "Well, great. Can you do something about these tickets?" He said, "No, I can't." He said, "It's in triplicate. You're gonna have to suck it up and pay it." And I asked him, of course, if my teaching was that bad, but he didn't commit one way or the other. At any event, I did appeal it, and that was a crazy appeal process. But the point being that they did drop the other 5 people, but I did have to pay my $200 fine. So it was a compromise. But this is probably one of the more expensive photos, or at least potentially it could have been one of the more expensive photos that I've ever taken. The next 2 images are that I'll tell sort of the same story, and I'll go through this quickly. This is Tombstone Valley in Tombstone National Park in Yukon Territory, Canada. And I stopped here. There were 3 or 4 people there, and the winds really picked up. It's fall and beautiful, the tundra, changing color with the reds and golds. And the wind picked up to the point where it was gale force, 50 miles an hour. Everyone vacated. I waited. I had to hang a bag of rocks from my center of my tripod to keep it steady. It was so bad. But I managed to capture this image, which has been reproduced in several places. The same thing happened here, a little differently. This is Great Sands National Park in Colorado. My wife and I got here. It's kind of a mixed day, and there were at least 30, maybe 35 photographers here, all set up on tripods, shooting. And then it started to get overcast, nasty. The wind started blowing and kicking up sand gusts, and every single person got in the car and left. And my wife and I were the only ones left there. What I did is put a bag over my camera and lens, and I waited it out because I saw the sun breaking through every so often, just little cracks. And sure enough, I was able to land the shot. So I think behind the scenes, the story that's being told in these 2 images is there are times when it pays to be the last person out. I mean, obviously not if you're filming a tsunami, but I find that oftentimes photographers give up a little too soon. So behind the scenes, we learn as professionals, sometimes it really pays to wait it out, even if you have to wait a day or 2, or in the case of Rod Lowe, he waited for 3 days to get the shot he wanted. He didn't get it, as happens to me all the time, but but waiting sometimes works. Okay, so before we get on to bears, lions, and other pets, and pets are in quotes, Christine, are there any things that need special attention? Questions?
No questions yet.
Okay, good. Well, not good, but we'll just move on. I say bears, lions, and other pets, folks, because um, there's no other way to say this politely, but there are morons out there, people who will do the stupidest thing when they're in the presence of predators, like bears, lions, rhinoceros. A woman was gored because her fiance wanted her to he wanted to take a picture of her in front of a rhinoceros. He gored her and killed her. In Yellowstone, there are constant issues of the bison, people bothering the bison, and that bugs me. But that's just the way it is. So let's talk about bears, lions, and other pets. And I would like to start with this magnificent animal. Her name is Speedy, or I should say was Speedy. And for 12 years, I have photographed her, and I've seen her have 3 litters over those 12 years, 2, 3, and 2. And here's an example. She's a gorgeous specimen, as you can see. Here's an example of one of her 2 cub litters. Wonderful mother, a good disciplinarian. She let the cubs know if they were out of hand. And here she is looking down a road just to make sure that it's safe to cross. This is a gravel road to cross to a stream. Here's a picture of Speedy when she was just out of juvenile status. She's about 5 years old here. Gorgeous specimen, the color in her coat. Notice, please, for a moment that her snout is straight. This is going to come in handy. Here she is about 5 years later, or maybe 6 years later, and she is walking toward me. Now notice here that if I can get this enlarged a little bit, the size of those claws, they're immense and very, very powerful. But also notice her nose. Her snout is turned, and that tells me, as I'm standing there photographing, that she is uncomfortable. So I back off nice and slowly and make sure my bear spray is handy, but no need for it, because I back off, let her have her freedom, let her have some mobility. I don't want her to feel fenced in. So you have to really be careful and know the behavior of your animals that you're photographing. To show you how powerful those claws are, this is known as a bear scratch. You see them a lot in Yukon Territory, in Alaska too, and bears will get up on the hind legs and just rake their claws down, and it just shows you the power in those muscles that are in their claws. So at any event, I photographed her for years. I photographed a lot of other grizzly bears. They're one of my favorite animals. They're dumb, by the way, but they're wonderful predators. And but I never got the shot of Speedy that I really wanted until I was there for a 4-day period. And the 4th day, I had gotten lots of good shots, but not what I was looking for. And I didn't quite know what it was, but it was something I wanted to get, a predator-prey relationship of her eating salmon or catching salmon or whatever. But on the morning of the 4th day, when I had to get back to Whitehorse to take a plane home, or a plane actually to Dawson City, I managed to get the shot that I was looking for, which is this here. And to me, it tells the story of the prey sacrificing its life for the predators, so Speedy and her cubs can make it through the winter. And to me, it was kind of a neat ecological scene, seeing her eating the salmon. And she had a peculiar way of eating, by the way. She would bite the head off generally, and then just take one bite of the flesh and then throw it away, and for her cubs. But anyway, so that's Speedy. I'll end this story just by saying that last year she was shot and killed by one of those morons that I was talking about, who didn't realize or didn't see that she was wearing a collar, which is because the rangers had sedated her and wanted to study her habits since she was such a successful breeder. But anyway, that's the way it goes. So staying in Yukon territory, this is the tundra when it's in full glory during the fall season. Reds, yellows, just gorgeous place in above the Arctic Circle. That's me, when I used to shoot large format. I don't any longer. It's just too much for me to lug around at my age. I shoot medium format now. But I'm going to tell you about two bear stories that have a backstory that's pretty strong. This is a bear that a friend of mine who lives in Yukon, he's a photographer. We went to photograph, and from about 7:30 to maybe 12:30, we photographed this bear. He was quite far away at first. This is a telephoto lens, but he kept on getting closer and closer. Tundra bears are about 3/4 the size of coastal bears because they eat berries as opposed to salmon. Less protein, but they have to be eating all day long, 18 hours a day. So here we are photographing, and she kept getting closer and closer and closer to us as she grazed through the tundra, wanting to get to the mountain areas that were behind us. So at one point, she stood on her hind legs, which is unusual for a large male like this. But Richard, the man I was with, it weighs about 260 pounds. I weigh about 150. So when she stood on her hind legs and started to look at Richard, I felt somewhat safe, which the moral of the story is make sure when you go to shoot bear that you go with someone slower than you. It sort of increases your survival chances. But here he is, rather. He's crossed the road, and we kept photographing, but he kept on getting closer and closer, and I went from 400 millimeters down to 300, down to 200, and I finally realized after I took this shot that I couldn't focus anymore. And I turned around, and my colleague had already gotten back into the SUV. I tried to get my camera off my tripod, but it was stuck. So I vacated when he was about 3 feet from me, and then went into the SUV, thinking that discretion is the better part of valor. He then grabbed my tripod, took it into the tundra. This is it after I got it back from him. I got out and just give him 2 quick sprays with my bear spray, and he took off. So you can see how he chewed this, because that's where my salt is from my handling it with my hands and carrying it all the time. So he was licking it and chewing on it, and actually I have his teeth marks in the tripod leg itself. And there's me afterward. I also had a wrist injury. So the thing is that, it isn't all easy to do. There are times when you run into issues where you really need to be careful. And try to use common sense. But in this case, I didn't realize how close really he was because I was so absorbed in taking the photo. Not a good thing, but that's the way it went. The thing I want to just tell you about this is this. Was the bear aggressive? Absolutely not. And I don't mean to be defensive of them, because I think they're kind of dumb animals, and sometimes they do very aggressive things. But I'm going to tell you a story. Yukon territory is 20% larger landmass than California. California has 35 million people. Yukon territory has 34,000. 23,000 of them live in the capital city of Whitehorse. That leaves 11,000 people for an area larger than California. There are 30,000 bear, 60,000 moose, and approximately 300,000 caribou, and a host of other animals that live in Yukon territory. So your chances of seeing wildlife is much better than seeing people. However, tundra bears, the Fish and Game Department has studied this in Yukon territory. 70% of tundra bears in the Yukon will be born, live their life, and die without ever seeing a human being. This bear that we photographed was one of them. I'm certain of it. So is Richard. He was just plain curious. So he kept on getting closer and closer and hearing the camera go click, 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 and eventually decided to munch on it. All right, last bear story, and this one was rather frightening. Like I said, I take photographers to Yukon every year, late August, early September, and I never take more than 3. So this case, you can see the Joker on the right here, on our right, holding up his bear spray. I teach people how to use bear spray properly. And then on the left, our left, is a man named Jeff. Keep that in mind because I'm going to show you what happened. So 25 miles north of the Arctic Circle, we drove on the way to Northwest Territory, which is 50 miles away from here. So we were about 25 miles, halfway there, when we came across a sow with 2 cubs eating at a carcass. There was a videographer there who had been there for a few days, and he said that he had been doing a documentary on this particular sow and had seen her have 2 cubs in the 3 or 4 years that he had photographed her and videoed her, I should say. And he said we couldn't see what the carcass was because the tundra grass hid it. And they had been there, he said, for all the 3 days that he was there, they had been eating on this carcass. And so we were there for about an hour and a half. Here the cubs are playing. Mama looks like she needs a rest. The raven behind is waiting for his meal. And we left here and drove back down to Dawson City, a two-day drive. And then I told everyone, you guys are exhausted, let's sleep in. I'll see you at 8 o'clock for breakfast. At 6 a.m., I get a banging on my door, and it's Jeff. And he said, he's shaking. He has his camera in his hand. I opened the door, let him in. He said, Les, you have to see this. And I took a look at it, and I took one look at it, and the words out of my mouth were, oh, shit. Keep that in mind, folks, because I got dressed. We drove a few blocks over to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Station, the RCMP station. A detective came, took us into a questioning room. He said, let me see the camera. And he took one look at the picture, and the words out of his mouth were, oh, shit. We thought it was a cell phone. It turns out they sent a helicopter up. I had made a note of where we took this. He reported back to me later that it was not a cell phone, it was a camera. Now, we don't know what the carcass was. He was kind of protective of that information. He claimed it was a caribou. I don't know whether that's true or not. We did not see a caribou on this trip. Sometimes we'll see 100,000. Sometimes we'll see a couple of thousand. Sometimes we see none. It's according to when the caribou feel like going over the Atlas Mountain Range from Alaska and coming here. But the point is that it was a frightening moment for us to realize that it could have been a human carcass, but the chances of that being so in the middle of a total wilderness would be remote at best. So who knows? One of those mysteries of life. All right, let's switch continents and go to Africa. I was photographing these giraffes. I had a guide with me who had a rifle with him. He decided everything looked safe. He went back to the to the rover. And I felt the hairs on my neck standing up after photographing these giraffes for 10 or 15 minutes. I looked to my right, and this is what I saw. You talk about feeling out of place. It's like diving the first time you dive with sharks, and you realize you're not the apex predator here. These animals that's what they're designed for. So this lioness is in hunting pose. She's focused on me, very uncomfortable. I took 3 shots, that's it, as I was walking backward and yelling for my guide to wake up and get that rifle ready, but she just walked off into the bush, and all was well that ended well. This guy, I got too close. I only got 1 shot off. I got too close and he started for me, but fortunately had eaten a deer the day before, so he was not in any mood to take more than a couple of steps toward me. But that sure scared me away. In this case, the animal actually got me, and that is this is a beach in the Galapagos, and I was walking along the beach and saw this cute little pup. Oh God, she was adorable, and kept on photographing. She ducked behind the rock, came out, but finally, one of the women I was with screamed, "Les, watch out!" And I turned as the mama took a bite, and I managed to get my butt forward enough so that she got a bit of my pocket flap, but not me personally. But the model here is just never stand between a mom and her pup, whether it be a bear or a sea lion. All right, bugs, very quickly, I'll talk about bugs. I was given an assignment to photograph the life cycle of the praying mantis. That's my favorite bug anyway. So here's, I set up a terrarium, and in this case, I got a shot of the male depositing his sperm packet into the female, and the male is considerably smaller than the female. And his reward for doing that was this, the female biting his head off. I've often thought I should have a contest with the best tagline for this, but I never did that because one of my friends came along and said, gave me the perfect caption for it, and that is something like, he said I looked fat in this outfit, something like that, which to me cracked me up. At any event, the poor guy didn't make it, but that's the way of life. The female then lays a very kind of special egg case, which is called an ootheca. And here's an ootheca with the young coming out. So I'd have to refrigerate these things so to mimic winter, and then put it in the freezer for a little bit, take it out, leave it for a few weeks, and then take them out, put them in the terrarium. Now they hatch during the night. So I would stay up from midnight until 4 a.m. waiting for them to hatch so I can get these pictures. And between 100 to 300 of these tiny praying mantises will come out, except for one night. I was single, by the way, at the time, living in an apartment. And one night I left the top off by accident. And when I got up in the morning, there were praying mantises like this, these little tiny cute creatures throughout my apartment, on the curtains, under the couches, on the beds, everywhere. So, and that's all fine and good. They eat each other. So every month or so, I would find new praying mantises, but they were bigger because they had eaten their brothers and sisters. Until one time I had been dating a woman and things got a little hot and heavy, and in bed she lets out this blood-curdling scream, and I see her, it was one of the last times I ever saw her. She was trying to throw an adult praying mantis, a big one, out of her hair. So my advice to young photographers is, don't do this. It's dangerous. It's certainly dangerous to your relationships in any event. But they are amazing animals, really. All right, let's talk about people. Any questions first, Christina?
Nope, nothing yet.
Okay. I love taking pictures of people. Even as a young photographer, I love elderly people's faces. Every wrinkle tells a story. And now that I'm in this age group, it's a very special honor for me to be able to photograph some folks. But I also love young kids. This one in Nepal, this man. This is an interesting story in that a man who befriended me took me to a market here in Jamaica, and this man came over to me, who was a friend of his, but he had psychological issues. This man came over, put his hands on my shoulders, looks into my eyes from 3 inches away, and he says, "I know who you are. You are Jesus, and I need you to tell the Pope that I have to speak to him." So I talked with him for a while, tried to convince him that it was a case of mistaken identity by a long shot, and he went on his way, I went on my way. Uh, Again, sometimes things happen. I was in a market in Otavalo, and this man came over. He didn't speak a word of English. He just did the sign of taking a picture, and I was able to get a shot of him and rope man. This happened. I was in a taxi in the same marketplace a couple of years later, and as I was turning the corner, as the driver was turning the corner, I saw this unfold, and I actually took this behind glass because I love the spread of color. It was just one of those things, and the way the kid acted. This is a BTS I think you will be interested in. I go to this market in Otavalo every time in Ecuador. So the people know me there. I leave prints for them. When I come back the next year, I give them prints for my prior visit. So this woman sells bananas, usually quite dour, but I asked if I could take a picture. She said, sure. But she was in darkness. I was hand holding and I had no way to do it. I haven't used a flash in at least 10 or 12 years. But on that day, this was taken about 20 years ago, I had a flash with me, and I simply put it between the end of the banana row and that plastic covered carton, and was able to just get a little pop in the flash so that I got her face illuminated also. And it's a scene, kind of a scene that I kind of like, a good travel photo. I was also on assignment in Nepal to try to get rug makers, weavers there. And I was in this shop, and I didn't like really any of the images I was taking. But you notice on the woman's left, there's sun shining in. And I walked past her and looked into the sun and managed to see this woman behind getting some thread ready to weave. And I just kind of thought it was a different shot. Fortunately, my editor did too. But we look for things like this so that we can come out at least with one sure shot that'll work. So eyes are obviously important in photographing people, but hands are too. It's something we all crave, is touch, that kind of thing. So in this case, a group of people were photographing the woman, and I did take a few shots of her, but I noticed her hands, every wrinkle telling a story, and I just liked the composition. Similarly, with this man in China playing this guitar, the lighting was perfect that day, coming through the open window in his garage. And this woman in Peru just took me, really came to my heart. She kept walking a few steps and then hiking up that heavy pack on her back, and then walking a few steps and hiking it up. And I realized what I was attracted to was her hand. So I grabbed the shot and I processed it in different ways, focusing on the hand, sometimes showing the alleyway so that I could have context. I'm not sure which way I'll end up with it, but I just liked the way her hand was draped. And I'll end my presentation with this shot because it kind of tells a tale behind the scenes of what really happens in real life with professional photographers. I actually went to shoot that little girl because she waved at me. She was smiling. But when she lifted her hand to wave, this boy, which was not even visible from where I was, he was sitting back in his seat. As soon as she waved, he whipped around and I got the shot. So to me, this kid is trouble, right? He's full of energy. I can see it. The women who are opposite him are probably used to it. They just have that resignation look in their face. But what I really love about this is the hand. The father's hand on his shoulder, knowing that he's probably got to hold him down, otherwise he's going to jump out the window or do something else that's dumb. But it was such a cute shot. This kid had such a sweet smile. This was in Sri Lanka. So with that, I'm done with my presentation. Christine, if I can just add one other item here.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is a crass ad kind of thing. Just for any of you who are interested, our Saturday, November 20th print workshop is closed. It's shut. It's all filled. But on Sunday, November 21st, I'm doing a framing workshop. It's limited to 4 people. Full day. You learn how to do gatorboard frames, traditional frames such as you're seeing here, and you actually make them and take them home with you. And even how to do the very popular open frames. So if you're interested, I tell you to go to my website and fish around there. If you go to my workshop section, you'll see it there if you are interested. So next thing is I want to thank you all for listening, and until the next time.
Okay, I do have a couple comments and questions.
Please.
Darren says, excellent photos and great stories. John asks, did you keep that bear chewed tripod? And then he says, don't fix it. What a story.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that I now use Really Right Stuff. That was a Gitzo tripod. I now use Really Right Stuff, and I don't know why, but I had a workshop here, and one of the people really needed a tripod. So I ended up selling it to him and regretted it ever since. But that's the way things go. But I have enough pictures of it, and enough people saw it that you know, that it's okay, but it was definitely a moment. I will tell you that. When you get out of an SUV and go to confront a bear, it's you know, you have to realize what the risks are. But you know, bear spray is much more effective than a gun. Bear's heart only beats about 6 times a minute. So unless you have a shot literally between the eyes, if you hit it any place else, including its heart, it will still come at you for the several seconds that it takes for it to know that it's dead. And by then you've been mauled. So a bear spray is actually quite effective.
John says that framing is becoming a lost art and that would be a great opportunity.
Well, thank you. I agree. You know, my take on it is when I have large installations to do, 20, 30 images, I hire that out. But if a person's buying one of my limited edition prints, or I'm going to a home where they're buying 2 or 3 prints, I love the fact that I not only took the shot and printed it, you know, post-processed it, printed it. I also love the fact that it's hand framed, and that's number one. Number 2 is framing. I remember years ago I sold a print for like $300 or $400, and the framing was more expensive. So if you want to save money, and literally 50% over what framers charge, and in some cases do as good a job, I won't say better, but as good a job, then learning how to frame is really the way to go.
Susan says, in the slideshow, there was a photo of a man that appeared Aborigine. I remember long hair, yellow paint markings. Where was it taken, and what is his culture?
Okay, that's good. It was that was taken on the island of Vanuatu, and there is a wonderful experiment, if you will, going on there where they're building resorts all over the island right at the shore, and the government has taken a swath of land that goes from one end of the island to the other, across the middle of the island, that is wide enough that a group of indigenous people can live there and not be afraid of encroachment. They can live the culture and lifestyle that they wish. And they have fishing on 2 sides, not logging, but ability to get into the medicinals that they use. A wonderful story, really. And I spent some time with those people, and it was just magical, being there with them.
Scott asks, have you switched to digital, or are you still doing film?
I shoot Fujifilm medium format. I shoot the GFX 100 and the GFX 50. I love it. I used to shoot Hasselblad digital, and it was not the camera for me. Good quality certainly, but I just didn't suit me. So I sold that. But I've been very happily shooting Fuji for the last 3 years. It's like custom made for me, so to speak. I love it, and it works. And that's digital.
John asks, what's your favorite place to photograph and what's your least favorite place?
Well, I can tell you the least favorite is where I live. In Maryland here. I mean, I love having Grace, but it's limited. I've been shooting it so long; it's limited in what I like. So maybe that would be it, close to home. Maybe would be the answer. But my favorite, I'd be so hard pressed to tell you. I've been on every continent. I've been to over 100 countries, and there are so many places I truly love. It'd be hard for me to say, really.
Okay. Let me put out the last call for some more, see if there's any more questions, but that was the last one that we had. And
you can always write me go to my website, lesterpickerphoto.com, and send me a message. I'd be happy to answer.
Okay.
I might be traveling, although I haven't traveled for the last 18 months, but that'll pick up starting actually in October when I'll be in Iceland.
And John shared your website with the chat.
Okay.
And I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. And we really enjoyed your talk. And I want to remind everyone that next week is a critique session led by Greg Holden that will be on Zoom led by Ron. Join us then, and we will talk to you guys next week. Thank you.
And don't forget to get your entries into the MPA.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Good night.
Thank you.